I'd ridden that stretch of road between Millbrook and my ranch 1,000 times, and I'd never once stopped to think about how far it was for someone walking, not until the evening I came around the bend by Cutter's Creek and saw 4 people who looked like they'd been walking since before the world was made. The woman was in front, a baby, couldn't have been more than 2, riding on her hip, and a girl of maybe 7 holding her free hand. Behind her, a boy of 9 or 10 walked with his head down, the particular kind of tired where a person stops noticing their own feet, just puts one in front of the other because that's what feet are for, and stopping isn't an option that's been on the table for a while. None of them had coats. It was October, and the wind off the ridge had teeth in it, the kind of cold that gets into a person's bones before it ever shows on their face, and not one of them had a coat. I slowed my horse and didn't say anything at first, just walked alongside at their pace, the way you'd approach a spooked animal, giving them room to decide I wasn't a threat before I gave them any reason to think otherwise. The girl glanced up at me once, quick, and then back down at the road. The boy didn't look up at all. "Evening," I said, when the woman finally looked at me. Up close she was younger than I'd guessed from a distance, not young, exactly, but young for how worn down she looked, the kind of tired that comes from more than just a long walk, the kind that settles into a person's shoulders and stays there. "Long way to Millbrook from here. You folks got far to go." "We're managing, thank you," she said. Polite. Final. The kind of answer that wasn't really an answer, the kind a person gives when they've learned that explaining themselves to strangers rarely goes anywhere good. "There's a wagon due through here within the hour," I said. "Freight run, but Joe Pruitt'll take passengers if you don't mind riding with the flour sacks. Faster than walking, anyway." Something crossed her face, not quite hope, more like the memory of hope, worn thin from being disappointed too many times. "We already spoke to Mr. Pruitt," she said. "Earlier today. He offered to take the children to the orphan asylum in Millbrook. Said it'd be easier on everyone, the children settled somewhere proper, and I could find work in town separately, maybe send for them later, once I was situated." Her jaw was set, the way a jaw gets when a person has had to say no to something practical, something that would have made their life easier, because saying yes would have cost them something they weren't willing to pay. I told him no. "We'll walk." I sat with that for a moment. I knew Joe Pruitt. He wasn't a cruel man, he genuinely thought he was being helpful, the way a lot of people thought they were being helpful when they suggested splitting up a family for everyone's convenience. It was the kind of suggestion that made sense on paper and made no sense at all to anyone who'd ever held their own child. "What happened to your place?" I asked. Not idle curiosity, I needed to know what I was looking at before I said what I was about to say. "Grass fire," she said. 3 weeks back. Came through faster than anything I've ever seen. We got out, but the house didn't, and neither did." She stopped. Didn't finish it. She didn't need to. I'd heard about the Calloway place burning, heard a man had died trying to get the stock out. I just hadn't connected the name to a person until right now, standing in the road with 3 children who'd lost their father and their home in the same afternoon. "You're Sarah Calloway," I said. It wasn't a question. "I am." She said it like she was bracing for whatever came next. Recognition, in her experience, usually came with strings attached. I got down off my horse. "My name's Wade Tanner," I said. "I've got a ranch about 6 miles east of here, too big a house for one man, truth told, and more rooms standing empty than I know what to do with. I'm not offering charity, Mrs. Calloway, and I'm not offering to take your children anywhere without you. I'm offering work. There's always work on a ranch for someone willing to do it, and I expect you're more than willing, and a roof, for all 4 of you, for as long as you need it." I looked at the 3 kids, all of them watching me now with the wary, exhausted attention of children who'd learned that adults didn't always mean what they said. "You'll not walk another step tonight. All 4 of you, or none. That's the whole offer." Sarah Calloway looked at me for a long moment, long enough that I wondered if I'd somehow gotten it wrong, said the thing that sounded like charity instead of the thing that sounded like respect, which was the only thing I'd actually meant. "All 4, she repeated softly, like she was testing whether the words would hold weight if she said them herself. "All 4, I said. "Your boy looks about big enough to ride double with me, if he's willing. Rest of you can take the wagon when Pruitt comes through. I'll flag him down myself, tell him there's been a change of plans." The boy, Daniel, I'd learn his name was, later, looked up at that, and for the first time since I'd ridden up, something in his face wasn't just tired. It was something closer to disbelief, the look of a kid who'd been bracing to be the one left behind and suddenly wasn't. "All four," Sarah said again, and this time there was something underneath it, not quite relief, not yet. Just the sound of a person allowing themselves, very cautiously, to consider that maybe this time the offer meant what it said. It took most of that winter for the house to stop feeling like it was holding its breath. I'd lived alone in that house for 6 years, since my wife died, and I'd gotten used to a particular kind of quiet, not peaceful, just empty, the quiet of rooms that used to have a purpose and didn't anymore. I'd stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing a sound that's always there, until it changes. I hadn't realized how much space that quiet took up until it started filling back in, boots by the door, a girl's laugh from the kitchen, the particular chaos of 3 children figuring out where everything belonged in a house that wasn't theirs yet but was about to be. Sarah worked harder than any hand I'd ever had, and she did it without once acting like she owed me for it, which, looking back, I understood better than I did at the time. She wasn't working off a debt. She was building something, careful brick by careful brick, the way a person builds when they've had everything taken away once already and aren't about to let it happen again through carelessness. She mended, she cooked, she kept the children's lessons going every evening at the kitchen table even after a full day's work, because she'd decided, somewhere along the way, that losing the house didn't mean losing the life she'd intended for them. I noticed things, that winter, the way you notice things about people you're living alongside without quite meaning to. I noticed that at supper, she always served the children first, and always made sure their plates were full before she'd let herself sit down, and even then, she ate slow, the kind of slow that looks like manners but is really just making sure there's enough, in case anyone needed more. I noticed that she mended everything twice before she'd consider it past saving, Daniel's shirts, the girls' dresses, even my own coat, once, without being asked, just quietly handed back to me one evening with a new patch on the elbow and no comment at all. And I noticed, one night in January, when the baby, her name was Maybelle, I'd learned by then, came down with a fever that had the whole house up past midnight, that Sarah didn't sleep at all. Not a wink. I came down around 2 in the morning to check the stove and found her sitting up beside the cradle with a cool cloth, humming something low and steady, the same 4 notes over and over, the way you'd hum to remind a small frightened thing that someone was still there. The fire had burned low, and the room was lit only by what was left of it, and in that half-light Sarah looked less tired than I'd ever seen her, not because she wasn't, but because whatever she was doing mattered more to her than the tiredness did. "You should sleep," I told her. "I can sit with her a while." "I know," Sarah said. Didn't move. Didn't look away from the baby. "I will." "Just, not yet." I didn't push it. I just sat down across from her, and we kept watch together until the fever broke around dawn, and neither of us said much of anything the whole time, but something about that night stayed with me longer than I expected it to. By March, the older 2, Daniel and the girl, Ruth, had taken to calling the ranch home without seeming to notice they were doing it. "I left my boots by the back door at home," Daniel said once, mid-sentence, and then stopped, like he'd surprised himself. Sarah noticed it too. I saw her notice. Spring came on slow that year, the way it does in this country, a thaw, then a freeze, then a thaw that finally held. By the time the first green came up along the creek, the house didn't feel like it was holding its breath anymore. It felt like a house that had people in it. All the way through, every room, the way a house is supposed to. I asked Sarah to walk out to the creek with me one evening in April, told her I wanted to show her something about the spring planting, which wasn't exactly a lie, but wasn't exactly the whole truth either. "Mrs. Calloway," I said, once we'd walked far enough that the house was just a shape behind us, "I've been turning something over most of the winter, and I think I owe you the plain version of it, since you've never been anything but plain with me." She waited. She had a way of waiting that didn't rush a person. I'd come to rely on it, more than I think either of us had noticed. "When you came up that road in October," I said, "I told you I had too many empty rooms and didn't know what to do with them. That was true. But it's not true anymore. This house isn't empty. Hasn't been, since you and the children came." I turned to face her properly. "I'm not asking you to stay on as help, Sarah. I'm asking, if you consider it, whether you'd think about staying as something else. As my wife, if that's something you'd want. Not because I need a cook, or because the children need a father, though I'd be glad to be one to them if they'll have me." Because this house is a home again, and I can't rightly picture it being one without you in it. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the creek, the same careful quiet she'd carried since the day I'd found her on the road, except this time, when she finally spoke, there wasn't any bracing in it at all. 2 years ago, she said slowly, a man offered to take my children to an asylum so I could find work separately. I said no, because the only thing I had left that nobody could take from me was the choice to keep us together, whatever that cost. She looked at me. You're the first person who ever offered me something without it costing that. All four, or none, you said that before I even told you my name. I've thought about that more than you probably know. And now? I asked. Now, Sarah said, and for the first time since I'd known her, something in her face wasn't careful at all, just certain, plain and warm as the spring coming up along the creek. Now I'd like to stay. Not because I have to. Because I want to. There's a difference, Wade, and I think you're the only man who ever understood that there was one. We walked back to the house together as the light went gold over the ridge, and somewhere behind us, I could hear Daniel and Ruth's voices carrying across the yard, laughing about something, the easy, unguarded laughter of children who'd stopped, sometime over that long winter, expecting the ground to shift under them again. We married that May, in the front yard, with all 3 children standing close, Maybelle on Sarah's hip, same as the day I'd met them, except this time nobody was walking anywhere, and nobody had to be. The house never went quiet again. Not the empty kind, anyway. Just the good kind, full rooms, settling for the night, all 4 of them, every one, home.